This is the William Hill Sports Book Club, and on this show we are taking a look at a much needed book about rugby league which acknowledges its past, details its present and sets out its future.
I feel like we're in this kind of loop all the time, trying to survive, but yet we've survived for 130 years, so we must be doing something right. So how are we surviving but never thriving?
Rugby league always seems to be in crisis in the UK, which is baffling considering it's actually a fantastic sport to watch.
It's like Rugby League sat at the bottom of a well saying, no one's watching us, and everybody's throwing down these ropes, but they're not actually grabbing out of the rope. Sooner or later, you're going to get out of the well, you've got to grab the rope and pull yourself out. You've got to do something. You can't just expect everybody to start helping you out.
Rob Watson has written Fighting for Survival, a manifesto for the future of rugby league, and that's what we're reading on this episode of the William Hill Sports Book Club. This is the William Hill Sports Book Club, and on this show we are taking a look at a much needed book about rugby league which acknowledges its past, details its present and sets out its future. Rugby league always seems to be in crisis in the UK, which is baffling considering it's actually a fantastic sport to watch. Rob Watson has written Fighting for Survival, a manifesto for the future of rugby league, and that's what we're reading on this episode of the William Hill Sports Book Club. Hi there, I'm Adrian Durham. This is the William Hill Sports Book Club. talkSPORT 2 brings you loads of Super League throughout the course of the season. And there's many a rugby league fan at talkSPORT as well. I support Hull FC, have done for 30 long, hard years and more. I've hosted many a grand final for talkSPORT in the past. Hugh Wozencroft, another talkSPORT presenter, is a St Helens fan. Side helping of London Broncos. Can you really support two teams? And Stuart Pearce, a Warrington fan. He travels to all the home games and a few of the away games as well. Paul Hawksby loves the sport, always attends the Challenge Cup final every year. So there's a big load of rugby league love at talkSPORT. And maybe some information there that you weren't expecting. It is all true. So when the chance came up to read Rob Watson's book on rugby league for this show, it was a definite yes from me. William Hill book reader Neil Foggin is with us as always. Your Leeds, aren't you?
Yes.
Okay, we'll deal with that. It's difficult, but we'll get through it. The author Rob Watson is here as well. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
First of all, always say that it's a fascinating read, no doubt about it. You don't have to be a rugby league expert or historian to read this book. It's a book that I reckon is open to everyone. It's like a reference book, a snapshot of where rugby league is at right now or last season. What were you hoping to produce with the book?
I think very originally what I was looking at doing was, original idea was to follow the Challenge Cup for a year, like right from the first round, which is on the community park, and all the way through to Wembley. Then I thought, because I'm going to Vegas that year, I can't write a book about rugby league that year and not mention Vegas. So then it became, actually, where is rugby league in general at in 2025? Promote it a bit more, try and get the word out there, and just kind of match where it's been in its past. I feel like we're in this kind of loop all the time of trying to survive, but yet we've survived for 130 years, so we must be doing something right. So how are we surviving but never thriving? That became kind of the theme.
Yeah, it is a sport that we love, but actually it's not got that universal love in this country anyway. And you mentioned Vegas there. Yeah. Obviously, Warrington, your club, went to Vegas, got absolutely done over by Wigan, your rivals. The big question from the book is, how much were the hot dogs?
Do you know what? I think I've traumatised myself so much that I can't even remember.
Sounds like they were expensive, but good. Okay.
They were very good, to be fair, right. which always makes it softens the blow a little bit. Yeah.
We'll talk about Vegas a bit more. What did you like about this book, Foggy? Or what did you dislike about this book?
I have a love-hate relationship with rugby league, which I think a lot of fans do. I think it doesn't get the attention it deserves, but we'll go into that later. And a little bit with this book, I've had a bit of love-hate with this book. There's parts which make me laugh. There's parts which I go, yes, go on. And there's other parts like, whoa, let's just calm down here. Let's have a grown-up conversation. So looking forward to today's chat.
Okay, give me an example of what you're talking about there. Or let's just calm down. Let's have a grown-up conversation.
I think there's an issue with the working class. I think we have been a working class sport, but I think there's a lot of fans who feel badly done to, and you need to move off. We need to sort of put that in the past, and we need to think, because we're not going to change people's perception if you believe still that, oh, it's a working class. It's all back to the greyhounds and the flat caps and whippets and all that sort of stuff. And it's moved on. The sport's moved on. We've moved on in the North. And I think there's that. It doesn't surprise you. Yes, I do read. But for nearly 30 years, I've worked in marketing. So I get frustrated with Rugby League because it isn't marketed right. But marketing is easy if you've got a great product. And sometimes in Rugby League, the product's not always there. And that's what frustrates me.
Any of that fair, do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, we're allowed to disagree, aren't we? Anyway,
Yeah.
that's it's always healthy to disagree. And I think the working class thing is and to be honest, probably at different stages in the book, I'm probably almost agreeing with you. And then sometimes I'm still presenting the kind of chips on both shoulders type argument as well.
Well balanced.
Yeah. So I think it's almost its greatest strength and greatest weakness at times as well, in terms of being proud to be still associated with its working class roots, but sometimes it's the main thing that holds the sport back as well.
And I think also we've seen it in the last few days that Nigel Wood has come back to the Rugby League as chairman, and everyone, instead of getting behind him and going, look, let's move forward, everyone's arguing with themselves. Oh, he's back and blah, blah, blah. Why is he back? He didn't do a good job the first time. And you think, this is the problem, is the infighting within the sport. How can you expect the world or other people to love the sport if you're all fighting between yourselves?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And actually, I had this conversation with our own Rugby League co-commentator, Paul Cook, played for both Hull clubs. Brilliant autobiography, by the way, can I just add? It's worth mentioning that. But he said the Rugby League in this country is desperate for the NRL, the Aussie Rugby League, to take over. Yeah. And I think that it kind of contradicts what you're saying here, but there is a feeling that we can't run Rugby League in this country. We need the Aussies to show us how to do it because they do it so well. Yeah,
and I would certainly like to see that, just to see if it works, but I think it would work. I think it might be, as I mentioned in the book, it might annoy a lot of people and it might upset a lot of people. You cannot please all the people all the time. You're never going to get a 100% approval rating.
And I think about the NRL, there was talk of it happening a year or 2 years ago, then it all went very quiet, and then they fueled it again in Vegas, saying we may have discussions. Yeah. But we go back before COVID, where the Rugby League was talking to Barry and Eddie Hearn about the possibility, and I heard stories of that it failed because they wanted full control of Rugby League, and Rugby League didn't want to give them full control. But you look at what they've done with sports like darts and snooker, they've taken it to a new platform, and Rugby League just doesn't seem to do that.
Absolutely, yeah. Like I say, it's almost like there's a limit that we can get to. For some reason, there's something holding us back. And I think it comes back to largely that element of not wanting to upset a lot of the old traditional fans who want it to be like it was in the 80s or whatever, and don't like any change. And sometimes there's bits that I don't want to change. Personally, I don't want to see change in some ways, but sooner or later you've got to try and move on to the modern world.
What I would say is, if we go back to the class thing, whether it should be presented as a working class sport, in the book, early on in the book, actually, you talk about rugby union in a very negative way. Yeah. I'm quite surprised by this, and I want to know where you were coming from. If I just give examples, you say rugby union feels like the emperor's new clothes. You talk on page 10 about Tarquin and Cuthbert, who never miss a game at Twickers, which, it made me laugh, but I can imagine rugby union fans are thinking, what the hell is he talking about? I know personally I've never met a rugby union fan called Tarquin or Cuthbert, but we know why you put it in there. One thing I've never really understood that ongoing thing. I'm not from the North. I kind of went to uni, got into rugby league there. So, and I appreciate the history and the conflict between union and league. I understand how it all happened. But we're 150 odd years on from that now. It's time to kind of move on. But the ongoing attack on rugby union from league fans, I honestly can't buy into it at all. Yeah. You seem to be. That's an early thing you've presented in the book.
Yeah. I might have to do a bit of self-reflection here and say the school I went to in Warrington was relatively posh. Still in Warrington, so it wasn't that posh, but relatively posh school, so they played rugby union.
Ah, okay.
Okay, so maybe there's a little bit of trauma there in terms of we weren't allowed, if you played rugby league for your club, you were not allowed to play for the school team.
Stop it.
No.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's how,
Okay.
we're going back a bit here.
Yeah, no.
But and so there's an element of the sport itself. I've not got a problem with the sport itself. I don't watch it much myself. I don't find it that entertaining, but I'm not got a problem with the sport itself. And I kind of touched on it, but only very briefly, in terms of when I say you can't blame Rugby Union for marketing the sport well, and saying and telling us that the Six Nations is amazing and the Lions Tour is amazing. They should do that because that's their sport and that's what they believe. And that's absolutely what we should be doing a lot more of with our sport. So some of it is. It might not come across like that, but some of it is banterish. So if I was talking to a Rugby Union fan, I'd expect them to come back with something and so on and go from there. But I acknowledge that you're right in terms of we've probably spent so much time fighting each other that obviously football's gone off way ahead of us, and other sports have probably left us behind a little bit as well. But yeah, so I think it's like I said, it's just the promotion of it more so than the actual sport itself and the way that's covered. So, for example, in Waterstones in Warrington, there are 20 Rugby Union books on the shelves, 2 Rugby League.
Whoa, in Warrington?
In Warrington. So I'm not talking Gloucester or Bath or Bristol.
Wow, that's mad.
In Warrington. And the 2 Rugby League books are Sinfield and Loughborough,
right.
which is brilliant.
Not
Great.
this.
Not that, yeah.
It will be.
So...
Was Paul Cook's autobiography not in there?
No.
Come on.
Yeah, this is what I mean. So, and like I say, that's in Warrington. So that's the kind of thing that I think, I can't speak for everybody, but that's the kind of thing that irks me a little bit in terms of the perceived misrepresentation of the 2 sports on that scale.
And I agree with you and disagree with you on the Rugby Union bit. Because I come from a school where we're 6 miles from Leeds, 6 miles from Castleford. We played Rugby Union and we had a teacher called Tony Cunningham, who was from Wigan, who was a Great Britain Rugby League captain for students. And we had another teacher who was from Warrington who loved rugby. They couldn't teach us Rugby League, couldn't even do it out of school time because the school wanted the perception of playing Rugby Union. So it's drilled from a very young age that you've got this jealousy of another sport because you can't play the sport you love because you have to play Rugby Union, because they want to play against the grammar schools, etc. So that was the issue, and I agree with you on that. And I think Rugby League fans have got this issue, and I think it was when we went to Twickenham for the Challenge Cup when Wembley was being rebuilt, and we used to go religiously with my dad and my dad's mates every year to the Challenge Cup final, even if Leeds wasn't there, which was a lot of times. And we went to the game, and I remember we were in the pub, and it was packed, was this pub in Twickenham. And we said to the landlady, what's going on? She had no staff. She said, well, for Rugby Union, no one comes in the pubs because they all are in the cars and they have picnics in the back of the cars.
In the car parks, yeah.
So we said, but we're Rugby League. She said, I didn't realise that you drink. So that she had to go and get staff. So, and then when you speak to Rugby Union people, go, we don't have an issue with it. You've got the issue with us. And I think it's also the jealousy of, like, when it went professional, we were losing great players. We've been doing it for years with Rugby Union players. Dougie Lawton at Widnes have been doing it for years of bringing on this talent. But when it was the other way around, we were all jealous.
Yeah, you've given it a good historical context into why there is that rivalry, and it's even more fierce than that if you go back to when rugby split into league. Foggy sent me plenty of passionate voice notes about this book as we were both reading it. You've got a question for Rob, I know that, but before you ask it, you've got to imagine, Rob, that you're in charge of Rugby League, you've got control of the sport. Okay. So, Foggy, what's your question?
What's the first thing you would change?
I could cop out here and say I'd get the NRL to take over, but I'll swerve that one for now. It's not a change as such because it's currently happening, but I would keep the franchise system and make it so it's at least 20, 30 years that we don't go back to promotion and relegation, I would say. So I think that's the biggest thing for the sport in terms of that consistency. They've dipped and dabbed with it. They've had it for a few years, gone back to it, and just say, look, you know what, from now on we are the Super League is a franchise sport. You've got to meet this criteria to come into it and then stay in it and so on.
See, I'm amazed by that. I think people watching, listening to this will think he wants to do away with relegation, wants to make sure there's no relegation for, 20, 30 years, did you say?
Yeah.
I mean, surely the essence of sport in this country is that, you have that meritocracy where if you finish top of, or in the top couple of places in the second division, or win the playoffs in the second division of whatever sport, you will get promoted into the top division. And similarly, if you finish low enough, you will get relegated from the top division. But you want to do away with all that. What's the benefit of
the benefit
not
of it for me is if you think of all the biggest sports leagues in the world, if we take football to one side for now, because we're very football dominated.
Except football.
Yeah, we take a football. We're a very football dominated country, so that's why we see that promotion and relegation as a sacrosanct thing. Every American league in the world, every American major sports league, franchise system, NRL franchise system, IPL franchise system. You can market that a lot easier. You can clubs can have a business plan for 3, 4, 5 years, knowing that they're going to be in that league. So all that developments that you can take much more time with your youth setup, your academy, and say you can even go to state and say, you know what, we might lose virtually every game this year because we're going to play a group of young players. But in 3, 4, 5 years' time, we'll be challenging for the title rather than we've got off to a bad start. We need to sign a couple of older players or a couple of Aussies to come over, forget the 2 promising young lads, get these in just to make sure we avoid relegation. And I just think it's not, teams can still come in and out. So, if somebody presents a really good case to come in, so at the moment London are out, for example. Darren Lockie's come in with some of his mates. It looks like they're going to have a really good go at it. If in 1, 2, 3 years' time they are looking in a much better place than an existing club, you can still come in and out, or you can, as the NRL do, add a team every now and again and still grow it. And I also think the sort of second tier teams, it would potentially benefit them as well because they know what they're doing. They know what their constraints are. They're not trying to overspend to get into Super League in terms of we'll sign a few players and risk trying to get promoted into Super League and then think, oh, actually, we didn't get promoted because we didn't win, and now we're out of money or whatever. They can plan for their future as well.
You detail all this mid-40s, around page 43, 44 in the book. So, Rob Watson's taken over Rugby League, says no more relegation for 30 years.
I agree with him.
You're okay with that?
Not with the 30 years, but I agree with franchise.
Yeah.
Because I think it gives you stability. You look at the American model, and I think the problem we have over here is because it's always been promotion and relegation, if something new comes along, oh no, that's not going to work. And everyone was out. There was a lot of traditional fans who didn't want it. And I think that's the problem. I think you've got to give stability, but do a little bit with La Liga, use the other divisions as a feeder. Send players out there to go and get experience. Send young kids out to go and play Dewsbury, etc., and learn their craft to come back into the game. I think it would work.
It's a really interesting one. I know there will be quite a bit of opposition to it, but it's a great discussion to have about the way forward. And another part of the discussion in the book is about you talk about playoffs in the book, and so we have a league season in Rugby League, then the top 6 go into the playoffs. The winner of the grand final at Old Trafford is the champion. So the team that wins the league during the course of the season doesn't necessarily become champions. They do win a shield, but it's a bit kind of token gesture. I mean, I love playoffs. From football, I love playoffs. It's very unfair, but since when was sport fair? I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it? So surely nobody wants to abolish the playoff system now in Rugby League.
I think there's plenty that would.
Really?
Absolutely. If you go at any fan forum at any stage, especially towards the end of the year, you will see plenty of comments. So-and-so are the real champions because they finished top. Obviously, not last year because KR did both. So
all right.
Just in case you've forgotten.
Unbelievable.
But you will see comments every year saying, so-and-so are champions, end of, because they finished top. The playoffs are just a Mickey Mouse thing or whatever. And this is, almost 30 years of playoffs now we've had.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing with that is, 30 years ago before Super League came along, we had a competition which happened straight after. You were champions and then you went on to play for Old Trafford. So it was a bit like a playoff system. It was just a different competition merged into Super League. So it's been around.
Yeah.
I think it's exciting and also it's pressure.
But the way I see it is that it's actually you're being the champion of both. So you've finished high enough in the league season to earn a place in the playoffs, and then you've negotiated this kind of cup competition, if you like, which is the playoffs. And if you win that, you've been great in the league. Not necessarily finished top, but you've been high enough to get into the playoffs, and then you've won the cup tournament, which is the playoffs. You're deserved champions. I cannot see a problem with it at all.
No, and virtually any other sport you think of as well. You think of tennis players, golfers, etc. You don't remember them for the wins outside of the major tournaments. You remember them from when they won the Masters, when they won the Wimbledon, when they won the Open, because that was when all the best players were trying to win that week. That was the big moment, and that's the watch when you have playoffs. That's what happens. You got all the best teams from that year are competing until there's only one left, and you have to beat somebody.
Because football dominates. If football was done in the playoffs, no, we wouldn't be having this debate. But because football dominates everyone's thinking, people go, there's lots of friends of mine who are football fans. It's stupid that somebody can win the playoffs from fifth, like Leeds did all those times, years ago. But it works for rugby league, so don't think
also, as well, on that, I would add, how the Champions League winners get decided? How wins the Champions League? We have a league system. The top so many go into the knockout competition. You end up with a playoff with two teams in the final. Yeah. Is that not the playoffs?
Absolutely, that's exactly right. And they just announced that next season in the football championship, the second tier, it'll be down to eighth that you can get in there. Two more teams in the playoffs, and people have suddenly said, "Oh, that's unfair to go up from eighth." Well, they go up from sixth. You know, of course, it's not fair, but football isn't fair sometimes. There's some dodgy decisions. Sometimes your players are injured or suspended, or that sometimes it's just not fair. But that's the nature of sport. And actually, what I love about that is that it shows that character. If you see something that's unfair, what do you give in? Do you crumble, or do you use it and channel it to hit back and try and give your best? And we're talking about the Super League, but you focus on the Challenge Cup a lot in the book, and rightly so. And one of the things I really love about this book is that you go to early rounds of the Challenge Cup. I mean, some grounds where, you can hear what they're saying. There's like relatives of the players and they're suddenly talking. It's a fantastic account, a first-hand account, and really gives a flavour of it in those early rounds. The Challenge Cup is something very special we should cherish, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And that would be, I think that would be my main concern if the NRL did come in and get full control. My main worry would be, would that be phased out altogether? Simply because obviously they don't have it. I don't think it would be, because I think they kind of appreciate it. You speak to most Australians and you think, oh, I love the Challenge Cup. Some players even say they come over to play because they wanted to play in the Challenge Cup and wanted to play at Wembley and stuff. So I'm not saying it would definitely happen if they took over, but that would be my concern, that we can kind of do without that and just promote the Super League rather than have this extra few games each year. But so I absolutely love it. It fascinates me really that there's, if we're absolutely honest, most years at the start of the competition, probably 5 or 6 teams that have got a genuine chance of winning it. But it's still maintained as only just behind winning the Super League, I would say, in most people's eyes.
Come on, Lee beat OKR a couple of years ago. It was like the best.
Yeah, exactly.
Ever. Yeah. It's just so glorious.
Yes. So that was. You've still got the chance of upsets. Not so much in terms of the earlier rounds, perhaps, that you do in football, but there's still you're not sure who's going to win it. And certainly once you get to Wembley, as a Warrington fan, I've been on both ends of it. We've lost, to Catalans when we weren't supposed to lose to Catalans, and then we beat the unbeatable St Helens team in 2019. We end up winning, and that's like best day ever when it's that way around.
Oh, talking of best days ever. Best moment ever. And this is how big the Challenge Cup is. My favourite moment ever was a Challenge Cup final when Paul Cook scored the try against Leeds in Cardiff in 2005. It was just so late on, glorious.
One of my worst weekends in my life.
So beautiful. And then the best game. And I think the best moment I've ever had as a fan of any sports, and I'm a big football fan, obviously, but is the Wembley win in 2016 against your Warrington, when Hull were 10-0 down and won 12-10. I'm not sure. I genuinely don't think I can top that feeling. It's the comeback, but that was our first win at Wembley. And to actually win that big prize, and maybe I'm in a very tiny minority, but I still value, possibly because Hull have never won a grand final, but still value the Challenge Cup higher than Super League. That may change in time. I hope it changes in time, but those moments, and that tells you everything. I'm a massive football fan. My club has won at Wembley, well, 100% record at Wembley. Internationally, England have had some great moments football-wise that I've attended, but those two are the big moments. Those are both, Challenge Cup moments. Yeah.
And like I mentioned in the book as well, it gives fans a chance to dream. Even if it doesn't work out that particular year, there's plenty. Like I said, there might only be 5, 6, maybe 8, possibly 10 sometimes that could possibly win it even at the start of the year. But that's still a lot more than you think realistically you've got a chance of winning the grand final at the end of the year. So there's those extra 4 or 5 teams where you're thinking, don't really think we can win Super League this year. But if we get a good draw in the cup and we play well in a couple of games, there's a chance we can win the cup.
There's Rob had a great idea in the book, which was to change Magic Weekend into a Challenge Cup weekend. I never thought of that, and I was reading it thinking, what's he talking about here? Then ploughed through it and thought, oh my, this is actually a really, really genius idea. Just explain what the idea is. Well, I just think
Magic Weekend and Challenge Cup are kind of fighting against each other at the moment in terms of, like you say, a lot of people used to go to the Challenge. That was the Rugby League day out. Whether your team got there or not, you used to go to the Challenge Cup final at Wembley.
Sorry, just to explain, Magic Weekend is when a round of Super League games are all played in the same venue, which is Newcastle, St James Park, or wherever. And all the fans converge on that one city. Just to explain that to those that don't know.
Now we've got the Magic Weekend and the Challenge Cup final and the Grand Final. And if you're a fan of a Super League team, you're thinking, well, if I go to the Magic Weekend, I'm definitely going to see my team. If I go to the Challenge Cup, I'm probably not. So I think there's that element to it, and I think people quite understandably enjoy the weekend away. And they might go to both days, then they can stay overnight and make a weekend of it. And I've been to not been to all of them, but I've been to many of them. I enjoy it because I'm a rugby league geek, so I don't just watch Warrington, I watch all the matches that day, and if it's close by, I'll watch the whole weekend. But I always get the feeling of it's almost like a bit of a festival, and it doesn't really matter whether you win or not. It's not, you're not right on the edge of your seat. If it was like last game of the season, maybe that would change in terms of so-and-so's got to win to get in the playoffs or whatever. But it's usually roughly halfway through the year, or sometimes it's really early in the year, and it's kind of like, a bit gutty we lost, but it doesn't really matter. Whereas if you make that a Challenge Cup, the last 16 in the Challenge Cup, so 4 matches Saturday, 4 matches Sunday, every game has some jeopardy, and it's for a lot of teams. If you lose that's your season pretty much done. you're not going to win Super League. And also, I think the benefit that I like is it would, if we've only got, even now we've got 14 teams in Super League, that means 2 other teams would get to Magic Weekend. So whoever stays in the cup longest from outside Super League, there's guaranteed to be at least 2 non-Super League teams that get to Magic Weekend, and that becomes a great day out for Widnes or Batley or Featherstone, whoever it is that get there, and something they can look forward to. They're never going to get to Wembley. It would be one of the biggest upsets in sports history if a team like that got to Wembley at the moment. But every year they have a decent chance of getting to Magic Weekend.
I think the issue with Rugby League for a long time was you had the RFL and you had Super League, and they were fine with each other. So the Challenge Cup was with the RFL. They were looking after their stuff. I think it's a great idea, is this a Magic Weekend being for the Challenge Cup, because I think what would also happen is we went to Wembley for the final to just watch Rugby League. I think if it become a cup competition where people would just stay and watch the games because it's cup football, it's different when it's Super League, because people might think they're cheating on their team watching someone else play, but it's that magic of the cup. And I think and also, there's another, we might go on to it, but when you're talking about the stadiums and that we should have these big stadiums, and it doesn't matter that there's only 20, they're not full. For a marketeer, it's a disaster because it needs to look, as long as you make it look full for TV, it has to look thin. So I would rather go to a smaller venue and it looks packed, because for a TV audience, wow, I want to be there because it's a sellout. I want to be part of it. And I think that's what, if you got Magic Weekend right, and use it for the Challenge Cup, I think it would. And I think the NRL then would go, hang on a minute, this competition is worthy because they're selling out
This
the weekend.
This guy has some good ideas. He should be running Rugby League. You gave him the job earlier. This is the William Hill Sports Book Club. We're reading Rob Watson's Fighting for Survival about the state of Rugby League and its future. My name is Adrian Durham. I am a Rugby League fan. I once survived having an argument with Sean Edwards. I once annoyed Andy Farrell in a Nando's. I was almost escorted out of Headingley for going absolutely wild when the ref Steve Ganson didn't give FC a penalty try after Steve Prescott was clotheslined as he was about to touch down and win as a cup tie. We went out. I can't cope with Rugby League when Hull KR are doing well. I barely watched a game last season. Rob, I'm that sort of Rugby League fan. The chapter on fans called What's Your Type I found absolutely fascinating. It categorises different types of fans that go to Rugby League in such a detailed way, funny way as well. You seem to be, it feels to me like you're quite critical of Rugby League fans. Have I misread that?
I'm quite critical in some ways of that kind of, a bit like what you were saying before in terms of we want more people watching it, we want more publicity, more eyes on the sport, but then sometimes if you overhear a conversation or if you see a conversation online, the actual hardcore fans of the game don't seem to like it. They're talking about the game's gone soft, it's this, that and the other, pointless, the refs are ruining the game. Say that in every sport, don't they? They shouldn't do, but they do. And obviously, this is not every Rugby League fan. Some Rugby League fans are massively positive about the sport. And obviously, we're allowed to have a whinge. Every fan of every sport has a whinge about their sport at some point. But yeah, I think that there's times when we're thinking we're criticising the sport, and I find myself doing it sometimes, we're criticising the sport and then bemoaning the fact that it's not bigger. Well, we need to be saying how amazing it is. A bit like we go back to the rugby union thing where I have to acknowledge, and you know what, they are saying that the Six Nations is absolutely massive and everybody loves it. There's no harm in saying that. No. It doesn't hurt anybody to say that. So yeah, I think we need to be a bit more like that in terms of, and the fans need to talk about it better sometimes. Yeah,
I know what you mean. And there's a line on page 76 of the book where, and it's the start of a chapter, it reads, as a Rugby League fan, you can often feel like the game is the best kept secret in the world. And I've often had this conversation with people who've just watched a game of Rugby League and they're like, wow, the ball is in play all the time. It's so physical. The skill levels, how's he touched down from there? Or how's he, slipped out that backdoor pass or whatever? That tackle was incredible. All of those things, and then they never watch another game. And I personally don't get it, because once I watched it, I was hooked. So, but then I am an emotional fan who I literally can't watch Hull KR doing well. If they're getting beat every week, I'll watch them every week. It's not a problem. So, I would say I'm not an expert on Rugby League because of that. The emotions just get the better of me with it. That's a different type of fandom, I guess. But I can't see in all these years with Rugby League being so brilliant, with the Super League being as projected as it's been over the last 30 years, I think it's the 30th anniversary, isn't it, this year?
Yes. Yeah.
That if it hasn't captured those eyes yet, is it ever going to do that? And is it to do with the fact that it is that largely that M62 corridor, and that's the perception that it's the M62 corridor and nothing else?
I think that's part of it, and I guess you probably know more of that from a marketing point of view, Foggy, but I think the longer it goes without eyes on it, possibly the harder it gets to sell, because people start thinking, well, nobody's been watching this for 130 years, so why should we start watching it now? Element to it, maybe. There is the geographical spread's definitely an issue, but I'd argue maybe, not absolutely sure on this, but a lot of the original Australian teams that used to be around Sydney a lot of the time, and that still became a massive sport over there, even though it's relatively regionalised.
That's fair, yeah.
Having said that, though, now with the NRL growing, that's one of the big things they've had in the modern times, is they've started putting teams dotted around. So I think that's how you grow the sport from there to there, is by expanding it, but doing it in a way that works.
But also on that, sorry, I know Sydney's not the capital, but it is the biggest city. Yeah. It's one of the greatest cities in the world. And I've watched NRL in Sydney. Yeah. And Rugby League in Sydney is gigantic. Yes. I mean, people, and if you think about the equivalent would be, London, where Rugby League is virtually nothing. Yes. It doesn't exist. Yeah. It's amazing to think it is so huge in a place like Sydney, but so small in this country. Yeah. And I think that's you're talking about different starting points there, aren't you? Really?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And that's where the geographical issue becomes, certainly historically. There's still loads of people who don't even know there are two rugbies. You know?
Is that right?
Yeah.
Blows your mind. Yeah.
I coached the University of Liverpool Rugby League team for a few years, and one lad turned up like first day of training one year. He thought we were playing rugby. He thought he was coming to the rugby union.
Right.
He didn't realise there were two rugbies. We just said, "Oh, come on, mate, just join in with us," and he carried on playing for us. Right. He's played.
Was he freaked out when there was a scrum?
Probably, yeah. Well, it's gone. It's finished. Yeah. So yeah, and you chat to people now that obviously not necessarily particularly sports fans, but just general, people at work or whatever, and they don't. You just say rugby, and they just say, "Oh, I saw England got beat off France the weekend." I went, "I don't really watch that rugby too much, but I realised they got beat or whatever." So yeah, and I think, I remember speaking to somebody again in Warrington who was much more of a rugby union fan. When rugby union went professional, he was like, "Well, no, sorry." He was talking about, how can you have amateur rugby league? That's not possible to have amateur rugby league, because he thought it was just essentially rugby union that you got paid for. So that, this is back in the day. And then I think a lot of people then thought, well, rugby union's got professional now, so rugby league doesn't need to exist, because the only reason it existed was because they were allowed to pay players.
I've heard this theory before. But they're two different sports, really.
Now they're massively different in terms of how the requirements to play. You'd have to be a pretty special player or a particular type of player to be able to go and play both now, I would say.
But when you talk about eyes on the sport, and I'd love to get your views on this for you. You mentioned in the book about Derek Beaumont, the league chairman, threatening to forfeit a game against Wigan because they didn't have enough tickets and all that. And it was the moment he threatened to forfeit the game that you said was good because it brought eyes on the sport. But I'm thinking that's a negative reason to bring eyes on the sport. It's a bit like, do you remember the 2014 Grand Final when Ben Flowers punched Lance Ohio when he's on the deck?
Yes.
That brought, I don't think I can remember an incident that brought that many eyes on the sport. And all the time I was thinking this is not good for rugby league, but from a marketing point of view, I don't know if it is. It feels to me like it's not good that you've got a chairman threatening to forfeit a game or one player punching another player while he's on the floor in a grand final. That bringing eyes on the sport for those reasons, is that good?
He's Marmite, isn't he? As a character. Yeah, he's Marmite. You love him or hate him. But he's also a genius, because by saying that, he's getting the attention from everyone. And we live in a world now where I think rugby league needs to learn that, especially with the younger generation, attention spans are very small. So we see it all the time, that a few minutes content, we've got to start clipping the game into what they're used to. You can't have a highlight of a 30-minute show or an hour. You need to be putting clips out all the time of 2-3 minutes. And that's what we should be doing. And that's what he did. He gave you a snippet, which could be clippable and go out, and people are watching it, and they get into rugby league, or they go, "Oh, look what's happening there." But the problem is the infighting within rugby league. You'll have people who go, "Oh no, he's wrong what he said. He shouldn't be saying that." And I think everyone should go, "Do you know what? He's put it on the highlight. He's highlighted an issue. Let's all get behind him."
Eyes on rugby league, isn't it? It's how you do it. But actually, I'm thinking about the sport itself. And there's plenty of clippable incidents in games which would make you go, wow. Yeah. And that's what I'd rather the eyes were on. But
absolutely, yeah. And I think there's elements of, I don't think anybody in rugby league, for example, was pushing that punch on in the grand final. I think other people from outside rugby league got hold of that and thought, oh, other people have been interested, let's show this. And again, with our chips on both shoulders, sometimes we get annoyed. Now you're interested in us because you've got something negative to say about it. So sometimes you feel like it comes from that angle as well. Sometimes, like, I don't know, if a player fails a drugs test or something like that, you feel like that gets a bigger bit of coverage than if a player scores a hat-trick in a final or whatever. Yeah. There's that element to it as well sometimes. But again, we can't keep blaming other people for the marketing. We've got to market it from the in out. So we can gripe about these things, but that's not going to move us forward.
No, that's true. And also when you're talking about eyes on rugby league and how it is a best kept secret, etc., you also say it's a bit of an afterthought media-wise.
Yeah.
It's covered in the UK like it's in the way of bigger sports.
Yeah.
But I would say to you, and I love your view on this, it's not the job of commercial media, and I'm just not just sticking up for my radio station. We have Super League commentaries, and as I said before, presenters who love rugby league. But it isn't the job of commercial media to be a propaganda machine for any sport, is it? And as you say in the book, clearly, football is never going to be surpassed in this country. No. It's so huge. And maybe rugby league doesn't get the coverage it deserves as a sport and the physicality of it, what the players put themselves through. I always think they deserve more attention and more love for what they're doing. But it isn't the job of commercial media, for example, to do that, is it? No,
it's not at all. So it's that's what I say about we can complain about it all we want. So it's not that's going to change anything. We've got to look at it from the in out. We've got to make it so they want to come and cover it, and they want to talk about it, and they want to show it, and they want players on their shows, and they want to write books about rugby league and so on, and they want so you can't just sit there. It's like rugby league sat at the bottom of a well, saying, no one's watching us, and everybody's throwing down these ropes, but they're not actually grabbing them with a rope. Sooner or later, if you want to get out of the well, you've got to grab the rope and pull yourself out. You've got to do something. You can't just expect everybody to start helping you out.
Well, I have this argument with media. I sat in meetings with media owners, and I go, there is a hunger from rugby league fans to get content, to see match reports, etc. You're struggling now with some of the newspapers covering it. And then I had a conversation a while ago with the Daily Star, and they says, we're going to start covering it. I says, you'll sell papers or you'll get eyes on film because rugby league fans will back you because they want content. Because there's a lack of content, and that's the issue. If there's more content, people will back it, then hopefully you'll get a wider thing because people are watching it.
Yeah, and I think you talk about the Sky coverage, and Boots and All was the programme on Sky that never got replaced. Yeah. And actually, when, say, Eddie and Steve-O were presenting Super League, I personally loved it. I thought it was great, and I'm not knocking those who do it now, by the way, but there were so many who were critical of those two, and then they were relieved when they went, and I thought, I don't think you realise what you're going to miss here. These two are good.
But I think that's a little bit of a classic example of what you were saying really early on in terms of they kind of... I like that you couldn't knock them for enthusiasm. They had plenty of enthusiasm, which is the main thing you want from anybody presenting your sport, whether it's on telly or radio or whatever, or in the newspapers. They had plenty of that enthusiasm, and there was plenty of noise there in amongst all the bluster. But there may be, I think the possible downside, and it wasn't their fault, it was just, did it live up to the stereotype again of that kind of northern stereotype? Are we trying to, which again to me I don't have a problem with, but I think if you're trying to market it, take it into the modern world, was that a slight problem against it in terms of anybody turning that on for the first time, going, oh, this is just typical old-fashioned rugby league, this is not for me, because it's still the same.
Okay.
But I don't understand. I believe that, but
was it Eddie?
It's possible.
Eddie Waring?
Yeah, way back.
Yes. They were going back to that, sort of saying, oh, these two are like Eddie Waring and Finn, and it was sort of, again, putting that sport backwards, not forwards, and that's the challenge.
Yeah, it is. It's putting the right people in the right positions, I guess. Let's talk about expansionism. I am not a fan of expansionism, so feel free to take your shots. The chapter starting on page 36 deals with expansionism. I don't get it. You've got a game dying to an extent in its heartlands, but we want to create teams for Super League in South Wales, but that doesn't work. So let's go to North Wales. Let's go to Canada. Let's have two teams in France. I'm absolutely baffled and bewildered by it. I would rather they made the heartlands as strong as possible. And actually, I think the whole expansionism thing is so disrespectful to the county of Cumbria. I can't begin to explain. It actually upsets me because you talk in the book about the only stadium fit for Super League fit for rugby league is Carlisle United's Brunton Park, okay, a football stadium, and they don't really play rugby league in Carlisle as such. The hotbeds for rugby league are Whitehaven, Workington, out on the west coast, west of the lakes. And I actually took a trip to both those stadia on the same day. They're very close together. I was seriously impressed I've never been to either stadium before, but seriously impressed with both stadia. And I'm thinking to myself that there absolutely should be, ideally, both these clubs in Super League to represent the whole area of Cumbria. That to me is a bigger issue than trying to start up a club in Canada. With that whole project just left me absolutely bewildered. So I'm not an expansionist in any way whatsoever. So shoot me down now.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Well, it'd be interesting to know how you felt I came across in the book, because this is probably the one area that I'm a little bit on. I can definitely see both sides. Okay. So I do, like you say, I do mention the Cumbria thing because I do think it is, given how strong the sport is, and certainly certain parts of Cumbria in the amateur game.
But those two grounds are, they are uninviting but warm at the same time.
Yeah.
They are traditional and they're not modern in any way, and they're harsh in some ways. You can imagine in one of the coldest days of the season, it would be horrible to go there. But those are the things I absolutely love about it. And part of that is, yes, I'm a nostalgic and I long for those times, but I don't want to go back there. It's a bit like LFC. I'd rather we were still playing at the Boulevards. But actually, I can admire what's going on with Super League. So I'm not saying it was better in those old days. But those two grounds, I don't see anything wrong with either of those two grounds at all, Whitehaven and Workington.
And I think the reason for the split in my head is, as a fan, like going to games and watching games and stuff like that, I would agree with you. I like when you're doing the away days and stuff in Super League, I actually quite like going to Castleford and Wakefield, for example, because they're still virtually the only two proper old school stadiums left.
Cass is great. I love Cass's stadium. It's so good.
It reminds me of Wilderspool, the old Wellington ground. So I get the nostalgia and stuff there. So in a way, I'd hate them two to get new stadiums, and then all of a sudden they all look the same. And
I even quite like Hull KR's.
That's probably the other one that's not a typical new stadium. So like I say, I can see that side of it, and you like the sort of link to the past. But then you turn Sky on and Cass are playing at home. And again, you go back to that thing, if we're trying to market this on a broader scale to a bigger audience, to make it look like a modern professional sport, and you see that stand in the background, I think I still like it because it reminds me of Wilderspool and got me nostalgia in my head and stuff. But if you try and take a step back and think, if you're trying to sell this to a newer audience, modern audience, that will look good on TikTok, that will look good on Instagram, like, what's that stadium now? Like, what is that? What does that even look like? I think there's that element to it there.
Could be a turn-off. And that's where, just go back to Foggy's point earlier about, you'd rather have, say, the Challenge Cup semi-finals at smaller venues that are packed. But actually, just say it's like a bigger venue, there's only 2/3 full, still a huge amount of fans more than in the smaller venue that's packed. So, and you kind of touch on this in the book, don't you?
Obviously, Wembley's that comes up a lot with Wembley, especially.
It was the whole KR Catalans semi at York, wasn't it? Last year?
So that obviously the semi-finals are a little bit different because they wait for the draw to happen and then choose the venues. So if Warrington are playing Wigan, then you're going to have that somewhere in that area, and you're going to find a big enough stadium that you think, well,
that'll be Saints.
Roughly that many, roughly that many people are going to turn up, so we'll play it there. And like I say in the book, I think it's a bit of a shame that whenever Catalans make a semi-final at the moment, they always have to come over here. If we're going to invite them and make them part of this thing, should we not alternate it where we say every other year that a French team makes a semi-final, the semi-final's played in France, because it is going to be a small crowd wherever you play it.
That's a great point, yeah.
But yeah, and I think in terms of the, like I said, for Wembley, the Ashes series this year was quite interesting because the first test at Wembley, yes, it wasn't full, but it was a good crowd. It was the biggest crowd I think we'd have for an Ashes match in
You've got to remember, Wembley's massive.
Exactly, the UK ever. And obviously they do that sensible thing of selling it out from the bottom upwards. So it's only the top tier really. It looks empty, so like you say on
Which
TV.
Looks good on TV.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It looks fine on TV, and it's still, I can't remember exactly what, 60,000, whatever it was, which we couldn't have got in many other stadiums. And then on the flip side of that, for the third Ashes test, which as it happened, it was a dead rubber, but they're at Heading. We're at Headingley. Great for the atmosphere, great for the increase in England's chances of winning the game, maybe. But had it been a real shock, and the Ashes had been up for grabs still, they could have stole that twice over. And obviously it was...
But it's down to availability, and it's also down to, there's a strong possibility this could be a dead rubber. We don't want to book Wembley and only have 20,000 as a dead rubber. You're also asking fans to go down to Wembley. We know Rugby League fans like to have a moan, and there would have been a moan of, Christ, I've spent a fortune on going down to a dead rubber. They can't win, unfortunately, on these situations. And I think, and there's a few things... the old grounds, I think also, if any sport is to survive, you've got to attract a younger audience. And one thing Rugby League has been really good at is families. Is families. I know lots of people will take their kids to Rugby League, but they won't take them to football because they don't think it's safe unless they're in the family zone. They won't take them to another stand. But in Rugby League, they're quite happy to take them to Rugby League. There's two challenges with that. I think the pricing structure we need to change because... Do we be radical? And I know they're businesses and we need to survive, but do you go, right, if you're an adult, you pay X and under 10s go free. So you're encouraging the kids to come along, you're getting the families. Families do not want, unfortunately, families are not going to want to go to CAS and to wait for these old stadiums where there's not the facilities, the toilets aren't good enough, or the food's not. They want to go to a modern stadium where all the facilities are there. So we have to move. Also, from a corporate point of view, if you're a brand, you have a brand image. Going to places like the old stadium might not fit with your brand, so you're not attracting the cash. And unfortunately, if you haven't got the cash, the sport's not going to survive. And then back to your point with France, I think the issue with France, I agree with you, but unfortunately, from a marketing point of view, our current sponsors are bookmakers. UK bookmakers can't advertise in France. So Betfred would lose 2 matches or a match if they go over to France because they can't advertise Betfred. They're paying X amount for so many games on television and an audience. Suddenly they'll be going to the Rugby League and saying, you know, X amount we pay, well, if you want to take that to France, I'm only going to pay you 75% of that. And that's the problem, unfortunately, with the sport, because we're not a Premier League, we're not football where there's cash and brands want to be associated. But I think to attract family brands and to try and move away from the adult betting, alcohol, etc., we've got to unfortunately have modern stadiums, show that family sport, show people in the crowd who are bringing families. Then those brands will go, we want to be associated with that sport because we're seeing our customers there, and then they'll put the money in, and then the sport will flourish.
I think you're in charge of Rugby League. You're in charge of marketing. Okay. You've got the job, all right? Let's just go through some of the other things that you talk about in the book. You talk about Wheelchair Rugby League.
Yes.
I'm good friends with Mark Wilson, who does a commentary on Wheelchair Rugby League. He's always bigging it up and does commentary on Rugby League, Super League for talkSPORT as well. Women's Rugby League, you go into detail on International Rugby League in the book, the Ashes Series, World Cups, Tri-Nations. Talk about countries like the Netherlands who are getting better all the time. So you really do give us a snapshot. You also talk about State of Origin in Australia, which, I mean, I'm still in awe of every single time. This is, for those that don't know, it's New South Wales against Queensland. The states take on each other. So players from rival clubs will be, or from the same clubs, will be against each other in this. And it's so fierce, it's ferocious at times. And we tried it in this country with Yorkshire, Lancashire. It just didn't work, did it?
So I'll ask you two a question here.
Go on.
Would you rather have a State of Origin series or have the Challenge Cup?
Oh, you've got one or the other.
Because we've got the Challenge Cup and we've got Super League. They've got the NRL and the State of Origin. What would you rather have?
I'd rather have the Challenge Cup. That's me personally.
Yeah, I'll probably change my mind on this one about 10 times if I think about it for too long. But yeah, I think at the moment, if I was in charge of Rugby League, I'd probably stick with the Challenge Cup certainly for now, just because it's there and we know how to do it and it's got the history and stuff.
What do you think?
Yeah,
I think you stick with Challenge Cup because you can't add another one because you get coaches moaning at the moment about how many games they're playing. To then put those games in, I think you've got to have one or the other. Yeah,
and I think that, I mean, it works in Australia. When we tried to do Yorkshire, Lancashire, I don't know if you remember this, but I couldn't tell you why it didn't work.
I know,
but it just didn't work.
No, but again, I hate to keep blaming the marketers, but how much was that down to the marketing, or again did they try it for a year or two, dip the toe in the water and go, oh no, it's not really worked, so we'll back out, we'll slap it all together.
Didn't fully
But I
get
think
it.
that's the problem with Rugby League.
Yeah.
You go back to the 80s Rugby League, you used to have the Yorkshire Cup, you had the Lancashire Cup, you had the Regal Trophy, you had the League, and you had Challenge Cup. Then you also had the playoff system, the Championship,
the Premiership,
whatever it was called.
Yeah.
How many competitions did you want? Then now, if you're going to do it, you need to go smaller, but make it the best it can be. Don't try and do everything. And I think that's the problem. Rugby League is, State of Origin works over there. We tried the game, didn't we, where we had England versus...
Exiles, I think they call it.
Yeah, the Exiles, etc. And we tried it for 2 years, and it didn't work. These things take time. And unfortunately, Super League and Rugby League have not got a big bank account to go, do you know what? We're going to try this and we're going to invest. It's going to take 5, 10, 15 years for it to be successful, and we'll stick with it. We dip our toe in and we go, oh no, that's cost us some money.
And to be fair, you do mention this because you say Super Bowl in the USA.
Yeah, first 2 Super Bowls wasn't there, but the first 2 Super Bowls kind of a bit of, this is a bit pointless game because this established NFL is much, much better than this new upstart AFL. So whoever wins this one, we know they're the champions and they're going to win. And they did win the first 2, and then maybe, we'll never know, but maybe only because the AFL team won the 3rd one, the New York Jets, big upset. From there, the Super Bowl, actually this is the contest now, so it becomes a thing. And now obviously it's the monster that it is, the Super Bowl.
One thing I really love, just to close up, I love the fact that you kind of speak from a fan's point of view when you're going to games. I think it comes across really well. But just finally, I want to talk about the chapter Cogs in the Machine, which I absolutely love. Yeah. It's about players, about positions, roles in the team. Yeah. And I think we really do need to respect the players in the game because they're properly putting bodies on the line every single game. And I have nothing but admiration and respect for them. And very quickly, I mean, I'm a big fan of Mavericks in the game. If I tell you 3 of my favourite Mavericks from the era that I really loved watching, say 20 odd years ago, Paul Cook at both old clubs was a Maverick, Tommy Martin at St Helens, Lee Breers at Warrington. Between the 3 of them had 1 GB cap, which is frightening to think of. And I just want to ask you very quickly, do you think the game, international game, GB game, has suffered because of a lack of Mavericks? Yeah.
I was told back to you, is that a Rugby League thing or is that a British English thing? Because I think a lot of other sports you'd say footballers didn't get many caps and this, that and the other. But yeah, massively. And I think also, like I said, with what Andrew Johns said in that evening with Andrew Johns, that you've got to find your own style. You're not going to beat Australia playing like Australia. You are not good enough to play that style against them and beat them consistently. You've got to come up with something different, and you've got to. We keep trying the same thing over and over again, and it's not working. So change the record and just try something different. What's the worst that can happen? You can only get beat again. You know what I mean?
And we have to keep playing Aussie, as you say in the book. If we don't keep playing them, we'll never beat them.
Exactly.
Which I love. And by the way, Andrew Johns, one of the greatest Aussie Rugby League players ever, had a little spell at Warrington where they thought they were going to win the grand final. Who was it stopped you?
It was Hull FC.
Hull FC?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Well done, yeah.
And
did you win it that year? No, you didn't.
No, we didn't, right? We'll talk about 2016 in a bit. Rob, thank you so much.
No
Congratulations again on
Thank
the
you
book.
very much.
It's a terrific read. And if you read it, you won't necessarily agree with everything.
We can't. It's impossible to agree with everything.
It's a terrific read and a much-needed book as well. Foggy, thank you very much. Really enjoyed it with you today. We'll see you next time on the William Hill Sports Book Club.